Have you ever been in a toxic relationship with like a romantic partner, or maybe you were raised in a family that had toxic relationships going on, like with your parents or with other people? So, this video is for you. We're going to talk about how to be in a healthy relationship after having experienced a toxic relationship in your past or being involved in one, growing up in one. Okay, my name is Stephanie and I am from the School of Modern Love. And today's lesson on modern love is how to love after a toxic relationship. I have 3 steps for you to do, like you can actually do for yourself right now to better yourself, to be able to get in a place where you can love after a toxic relationship. And I think if you're dating in this day and age, in this world, like you're gonna run into a toxic relationship. I got swept up in one several years ago and it just totally blindsided me. Like being gaslit, being like all the things, it was took me out of nowhere. Like I was just, you don't know until you get into one, like how much of a mental mind fuck it really is. Like it totally messes with you. And maybe you were raised in a family that had these like toxic elements or codependency involved in relationships. And now as an adult, you can see and you're wanting to be in a new and healthy relationship, but there's like these patterns of behaviors. So 2 things I wanted to point out in regards to toxic relationship, two main things to identify a toxic relationship. Okay, what I actually mean by that. So one of them is domestic violence. It's the domestic violence wheel. Okay, and you can look this up online. And there's a domestic violence wheel, and then there's like this cycle of violence. And so there's 3 phases in this cycle. It is the honeymoon stage, this like amazing stage. It's like really, really good. It feels good. And then there's this the tension builds stage where it's like you're kind of walking on eggshells around this person. You're not sure what to say. You try to keep the peace, all that stuff. And then there's the explosion. And like either the act of violence happens or they have a freak out, whatever it is. And then it goes back to the honeymoon stage and like, oh, I'm so sorry. And things are beautiful and wonderful again. And you just try to pretend like that explosion didn't happen and move on with your life. And then you keep going around in the circle. So in my relationship, that totally happened. Now, it wasn't physical violence, but it was this emotional and verbal explosion that would happen so regularly. And then that tension would build and it was just so uncomfortable. So look that up, learn more about that. And then the other dynamic that happens is this drama triangle. Another theory you can go out and really research and learn, but it is that each person plays a part. And there's 3 parts, and there's the victim, there's the rescuer, and there's the perpetrator. And even in one argument, in one conversation, you can move around to all 3, and they can move around to all 3. So it's like I can play the victim and like, oh, but this is so horrible for me, poor me, like wanting the person to rescue me. And then if they don't, I label them as the persecutor. And then I'm like, I'm going to just rescue myself. And then you move yourself into the rescuer role, which then puts them as the victim. And it's like, well, now look, and then you become the perpetrator. So you can kind of like bounce around between all of them. Again, another thing to look at in regards to relationships that fosters a lot of codependency in that drama cycle, needing the other person to do or say something to help you feel better. And this is vice versa. The other person can be doing the same thing with you. What you have control over is you in the relationship, which is what we're going to talk about here. But those are 2 big concepts when I talk about toxic relationships. They involve some of these concepts and these theories. Again, it's always good to learn more about it. And so these are learned behaviors that we have over time, either with repetitive relationships or even one relationship that might have been toxic, or again, parents that you've grown up with and have learned these behaviors. you have to get into a healthy relationship, you have to unlearn a lot of these behaviors. So I have the three steps here for you to go and to start to think about and work through one by one to help you heal and be able to be in this healthy relationship. So the first thing to do is going to be to learn and understand more. So when I learned that I was in a toxic relationship, I was actually teaching a class on domestic violence. And then I saw that that's the stages of domestic violence. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. Like in the middle of the class, I was like, oh, this is me. I didn't say anything at the moment because I was the teacher and the professional in the moment. But during my counseling training, I was shocked. And I wanted to learn more about it. So, and because I'm in this field, I wanted to learn more about the pathology and the codependency, how it actually works. But I think for you, I don't think you need to learn necessarily a lot about the negatives unless you want to, but learn about what is a healthy relationship. What does that mean? What does that look like? And what do I want it to mean? Do you want it to mean a healthy relationship is someone that you can be vulnerable with or you can share things with? What do you want a healthy relationship for you to look like? So taking the time to figure that out and look at other examples, how do other people argue or not argue, or what do they do about money differences or cultural differences? How do other couples in a healthy way process it? And then taking pieces of what you hear and creating your own vision of what you think a healthy relationship, the healthy relationship that you want would look like. Okay, so that's step one. Just really getting educated and learning about unhealthy and healthy relationships. 2 would be to catch yourself in the patterns of unhealthy behaviors. So catching yourself. So one thing that would happen with me is that after I got out of the toxic relationship, when I was going into other relationships afterward, I would do things that my ex would do to me. So one thing he would do would be well, why don't you just leave? Why don't you just it would be a silly thing that would happen, and he would make it this big deal and be well, then why don't you just leave? Why don't we just end the relationship? And it would leave me feeling like having to defend the relationship and why I wanted to be in it, which now it makes sense. He wanted that reinforcement to know that I was committed to the relationship in the moment. I started doing that in other relationships because I was feeling insecure. And I had to catch myself because I didn't like that. I didn't like how I was showing up. I knew how it felt when it was done to me. And I didn't want to do that in my new relationships. I didn't want to foster the cycles, either that domestic violence cycle. I didn't want to foster the that drama triangle cycle either. So it took me stopping and pausing, being aware of those behaviors, and refocus on how I wanted to show up. So again, my vision of what a healthy relationship is, how I wanted to show up in the relationship. Okay, and the third step is to accept what I have to be willing to do to create that healthy relationship. So if you think about it, if we want to be vulnerable, if you want to share, if you want to have that closeness with your partner, that's uncomfortable. You have to be willing to first be close with you and understand who you are and do that work first before you're able to do that with a partner. And are you willing to do that? Are you willing to examine those unhealthy behaviors and change them and be uncomfortable in the moment when you change them? That's some serious things to think about. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to change your neural pathways and think differently and act and show up differently in your relationships? Yeah. So it's not this easy, quick fix. It's simple, But if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Everyone would heal from toxic relationships, and I wouldn't need to make this video. It takes time. It takes focus and willingness to commit to it. And that third question there is like, are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to be wrong, to have open communication, to share things about yourself that support you and your partner, like in your growth together? Okay, I have one more tip here for you, and it kind of goes along with all of that. So you have those first three, but then this last piece is to really own your own emotions and provide for yourself first. So whatever you're trying to seek in an outside relationship, create that for you first. Whether you're looking for security or love or acceptance or belongingness, learn how to do that for you first. Okay, because then your worth and your value and your security isn't dependent on whether or not someone else is willing to be your boyfriend or your girlfriend. Because you've got your back. Okay, to be able to love yourself. So someone can choose to stop loving you and doesn't want to love you, and that's okay because you can still love you. Okay, and that's like your ultimate, that's the ultimate cure to codependency, if you can just do that for you. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions about this. So you have the 4 steps. We're learning about healthy and unhealthy relationships and habits and behaviors. And 2, catching yourself when you're doing the unhealthy behaviors and the patterns and the ways of thinking, and changing those and getting curious about them. Step 3 is to acknowledge of where you want to go in a healthy relationship, what that looks like, and accept the willingness to become that person and what it's going to take to do that. And then 4 is to own your own emotions and provide for yourself first. Okay? So give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Thanks so much for watching School of Modern Love. Give it a follow. I'm going to have videos every week on tips for learning to love. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.